Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest office hours webinar. We'll give everyone a second to settle in, and then we'll get started in about a minute or so. Before we get started, feel free to grab a beverage, grab something to snack on, and then we'll get this show on the road. Just a brief reminder for those of you who are here for the first time. My name is Luca. I'm a customer success specialist here at Productive, and I'll be your host for today's office hours webinar on the topic of invoicing. Before we get started with the event itself, just a few key notes up in advance. First up, on the last session, we mentioned that we'll be having a little giveaway today. The giveaway is on, and it will be at the very end of this event. So the giveaway is for a few things that we have. So this beautiful black bottle, an official Productive T-shirt that will let you strut around the office in it, some stickers of various colors and sizes, a nice metal straw, and an official Productive bottle opener. So we'll have two of these handed out at the very end. We'll have a short quiz to determine who gets to walk home with the award. And before we get started, the next topic for our office hours will be profitability and revenue recognition in Productive. We'll keep you updated on the dates and everything in that regard. Also, remember that during the webinar, you're more than free. We encourage you to ask questions. You can do so in the chat part. You can do so during the event itself. And then at the very end, after we're done with the initial phase, we'll go through your questions and hopefully answer as many of them as possible. With that said, I think we are ready to go live. So let's get this show on the road. Let me share my screen here. So sharing desktop. Okay, you should see my screen now. All right, so invoicing. The first question, of course, that we have to ask is why invoicing? Well, here's the thing. In Productive, everything is to a certain extent optional. You can choose not to use tasks if you don't want to. You can choose not to schedule people. If you're feeling very adventurous, you can even have your people not track time. However, invoicing is the one part that you absolutely have to do in order to get some money in. Otherwise, your agency is not going to be profitable for long. So invoicing is something that you absolutely have to do, whether in Productive, whether somewhere else, but it's something that you absolutely have to do. Now, one argument that we hear often is, well, we're going to do our budgeting and everything and time tracking and whatnot in Productive, but invoicing we're going to do in a completely separate tool, separate from Productive, disconnected, and we are perfectly fine with that. Now, this is okay, I guess, but it can be better. And there are a few things that you would be better off if you actually prepared your invoices in Productive instead of doing it in this completely separate tool. With that said, I have to mention one thing. Productive is not an accounting tool, nor is it looking likely to be one in the very near future. So what Productive actually does is it doesn't substitute your zeros, your exacts, your QuickBooks, your whatnot. It simply is there to prepare the invoice for you to then copy over into this accounting tool that you are using. So how does this work? Well, with the process that I previously explained, the suboptimal one, so to speak, Productive would be used to set up your job, to track time, to track expenses, do all of the other good things that Productive offers. Then, once you're ready in your accounting tool of choice, you would invoice the job. So you would manually create the invoice from scratch. And in that tool, you would then also have log payments, which would, of course, feed back into the invoices so that you can see which invoices have been paid, which have not. However, as we can see, there is no connection between these two. And this can pose certain issues or challenges. The first one, it creates additional work. Imagine if you have a budget with 20 line items. You would have to go into your accounting tool of choice and create it one by one manually every single time. It just creates a lot of additional admin work that you can avoid. Secondly, this much manual work inevitably opens you up to mistakes. Somebody created 19 line items on an invoice instead of the 20 that they should have. Your total value of the invoice is $20,000 instead of 19. So a lot of chance for mistake on that front. And point three, communicating key info. If I'm a budget owner, if I'm managing a budget in Productive, I want to know if the job that I'm managing has been invoiced. I want to know if the budget that I'm managing has been paid for. Because if I have a weekly meeting with my client, this will allow me, this knowledge that they have not paid an invoice, lets me raise the issue with them and maybe expedite the whole situation to our benefit. So it's generally a good idea to have all of the stakeholders in this process aware of all of the information that's relevant to them. So how do we do this with Productive? Well, the first step remains the same. We set up our job in Productive with a budget the same way that we would normally. The second step, okay, we prepare an invoice in Productive. So we use the data that we have already in Productive, such as budget data, time tracking, expenses, whatnot, to pull all of that information into an invoice. Once we're ready, we copy the invoice over into our accounting tool of choice. This is a simple one-click action that doesn't take much time, and it ensures complete accuracy to the invoice that we had previously prepared in Productive. And point four, we log payments in the accounting tool of choice, right? The final benefit here is that the whole information then flows backward as well. The payments log here will be assigned to the invoice in our accounting tool. That invoice is still linked to the invoice in Productive, and as such, the payment information will land in Productive as well. And that all lands on the budget as well, bringing us in essence to something like this, where we have all of the information available in one place. Have we set up the budget properly? Sure. Okay, let's say we have. Okay, but has everything that we wanted to been invoiced? Are there any unpaid invoices? Are there any invoices that are overdue? And overall, we can also see how much money we have coming in, both in the past and in the future. So that's like our golden goal that we are aiming towards. So how does it work in practice? Well, for that, we'll go over to my a demo organization here. Let me just move things around here for a second. All right. The first thing that we want to start off with is our settings. So we're going to go into settings. And we're going to go, to nobody's surprise, over to invoicing. In here, the first thing that we want to do is we want to turn this little toggle on. So we want to turn invoicing on as an option. Scrolling down, email format, we can choose either HTML or plain text, and we can choose to remove Productive's branding. Simple stuff. Default payment terms. After what time does an invoice go from open to overdue? My default payment terms here are 15 days. But what I can also do is I can set up different payment terms for my individual companies, clients. For example, in this case, I have Galaxy News Network. And for them, I can set their payment terms to be, instead of 15, to be 30. Cool. Moving further down, invoicing options. So here is where I can choose how the numbers are attributed to my invoices, or even better said, how my invoices are being numbered. So if we take a look at this subsidiary of mine, we see that I have turned on the option of auto-generating invoice numbers. This means that Productive will automatically assign an invoice number to each invoice that I create. Right? We'll start with 1, then move to 2, 3, and so on. If I turn this thingy off, then I'll have to manually assign a number to each invoice that I create. Option 3 is that, as we'll show in a second, option 3 is that we don't use Productive to generate the invoice number, and instead we use our accounting tool of choice to generate the invoice number for us. We'll touch upon that in a second. Once we have that decided, the next thing is, or actually I should say the last thing that we need to do is set up our different tax rates. You can have one, you can have multiple, however you see fit, really. Once we're good on that front, we're ready to move on to other things. We'll go really, really quickly into our document templates here. So if you go to settings and document templates here, this is where you will define what your invoices will look like if Productive is used to generate your invoice PDFs. I won't go into too much detail here, but note that you can set them up here. You can set up multiple templates that you can then use in the future. All right. The last thing that we want to do in terms of the setup is to set up our integration. And this is a very simple and easy process. So if we go into our app marketplace, this is where you'll be setting up all of your integrations, be it Slack, be it calendars, whatever. However, here we have the category called accounting. So we're clearly interested in that. And here we have a list of all of the tools that Productive already integrates with. As you can see here, my tool of choice is 0 because it's already linked somewhere. So let's click on that. And yeah, for the rest of this video, I'll be using 0 as my default accounting tool. You can just replace 0 with whatever it is that you folks are using. All right, so what do we do? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to click on Connect App here. Now you'll notice something interesting here. I already have it connected, and yet it's telling me that I can connect it again. The reason for this is because I have 2 subsidiaries, and I can connect multiple subsidiaries, each of them to a different accounting account. So you hit Connect App, you'll be asked to log into your accounting tool of choice, and after that, once you do the login, this will pop up. The first thing that we want to do is we want to set up our tax rates mapping. So in Productive, I have VAT. In 0, I want that to map to exempt sales, for instance. Next up, a few other things that 0 can do for us here. Who generates the invoice numbers? Already mentioned that. So in my case, I've set it for 0 to generate my invoice numbers, not Productive. Who generates the invoice PDF? Again, I'm defaulting to 0 here. Sync options. Do I want to sync payments from 0 into Productive? I honestly don't see why not, so I'll turn that on as well. Invoice status. So when we copy an invoice from Productive into 0, which status does the invoice have in 0 initially? I'm choosing draft, but you have a few other options here. What are we sending to the 0 reference field? And in other tools, it will have different names, but that's the general idea behind all of these mappings. So I can either send over the subject or the purchase order number. I'm going to choose subject here. And lastly, send to 0 internal note. So internal note is not something that you send to clients, hence internal. And this is where you would normally map a custom field from Productive to 0, right? In my case, I don't have a custom field set up, so I'm just going to skip that and leave it blank. Next up, the thing that I want to do is I maybe want to map my service types in Productive to my account codes in 0. This is a part where you'll probably need to reach out to somebody who does your accounting and let them know what is the best way to map this. Alternatively, if you want to keep it simple at the start, which you can, and there's nothing wrong with that, you can just have everything default to the default 0 account code, and then in 0 itself, the accountant or whoever else can actually distribute this revenue as necessary. Same thing goes for expenses. So 0 and QuickBooks are 2 tools that Productive integrates with where you can actually send expenses directly from Productive to this tool. In this case, I want to enable it. And again, I want to set up a default account code with a potential additional mapping of my service types. Once I'm done with that, I'll hit save and we're done here. That is basically the entire setup that we have to do. It should take you no more than 10 minutes at best. Once we're good with all of that, we're ready to actually start doing some invoicing. So how did that happen? Well, in order to do any invoicing, we have to first take a look at our budget, right? The budget is the foundation for invoicing. And generally, when you agree on a job with a client, you'll also agree on the invoicing cadence, right? Let's say that you're working with a fixed fee job, and you agree with the client that you're going to invoice them 50% upfront and 50% at the very end. Fine, Productive supports you on that front. You want invoicing everything all at once? Sure, works as well. Second option is that you're working with a time and materials job, where your agreement with the client is, hey, we're going to deliver work over a period of, let's say, 1 month. And then at the end of the month or at the start of the next month, we'll be invoicing you for the work on that previous month. Productive supports you in this regard as well. So what I've done here is I've created 2 budgets in advance. I've created my greenhouse initiative, which is a fixed fee, and I've created this promotional campaign, which is a time and materials job. We're going to be using this job to demonstrate how invoicing works. So I've tracked some time here, a total of 14 hours. And now I want to invoice the client for this work. I can create an invoice from several places in Productive. I can use the new invoice option here. I can go to the Invoices tab here and hit plus invoice. Or I can even just mouse over here and go to this option here, whichever suits you best. For now, I'm going to use the new invoice option here. And now we're in the invoice preparation phase. All right, in this stage, it's a very simple setup. Do we want to invoice multiple budgets at once or just the one? So if I select all of them, I can invoice all of my open budgets for this client at the same time, as long as they have the same currency. In my case, I won't do that. I'll just choose the promotional campaign. Okay, once we're done with that, we're in the so-called invoicing wizard, and it's magical. So the invoicing wizard is where we choose how we're actually going to be doing the invoicing. What's the general way that the invoice will be created. And we're going to go through these step by step. First up to the left, we have the invoicing method, and we have 3 available here. First one, uninvoiced time and expenses. This one is generally used for time and materials jobs. So let me invoice all of the time and expenses that we tracked last month, right? This can also be, this year. You can choose any period that you want, really. The second amount is generally used with fixed jobs, where you just say, okay, I want to invoice everything that's on the budget at once. So total amount, give me everything. And the last option here is a percentage, right? So we're invoicing 50% of the job now, and we're going to be invoicing 50% at the very end. I'm going to choose the uninvoiced time and expenses since I'm dealing with a time and materials job. Once I've decided on that, here below I can choose, and yeah, before we continue there, note that here below we have a preview of what is going to be showing up on our invoice, right? And we'll see that change right now. I can choose here the option to display my time in a different manner. So the line items here can be presented in a different way. For instance, currently we are only showing the service. But if I if I add here the variable of time entry, oh, well, now we have 3 line items, right? Because each individual time entry is split into its own line. So you can do this to get as granular with your invoicing as you want. We can even do something as simple as, give me just the budget. And that's it. In my case, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose the service option. Same thing goes for expenses. I don't have any expenses tracked here, so this is grayed out. To the right, we are choosing some other things regarding the invoice. So which legal entity on our end is doing the invoicing? I have two subsidiaries, East and West. I'm going to choose East. Which tax rate are we applying? So we're doing the 20% one. And which template, remember we talked about templates a bit ago, are we using? Once we've set all of that up, we can hit the create draft option. However, before we do that, I'll just take you a step back here to show something that's interesting. Note that when we first entered this screen, this invoicing wizard, we had this blue ribbon up here. It says invoice settings applied from previous invoice sent to Westech. Westech is my client. This means that when I create an invoice, Productive will remember my settings and then apply those to my next invoice. This, in essence, just means that you'll spend less time in the wizard, as little time in the wizard as you have to, because Productive will do at least part of the work for you. With that said, once we have our draft created, I'll hop over to another invoice here. This is not a draft, so let's see. Okay, this is a draft. Once we create a draft, this is what we will see. So some basic information about our invoice. To the left, we have our invoice number, not assigned yet because this is still a draft. It's not an official invoice as of yet. PO number, which we can, but we don't have to assign. The issuer of the invoice, the date of the invoice, which I can change here as needed, and the due date. So this will be pulled in automatically from the payment terms that I've set up, but I can also change it here as needed. And of course, the subject. This campaign here, this is my this is the name of my budget in this case. To the right, I have my billing info. So who are we billing? We're billing Westech Advanced Research. Who is doing the billing? It's Vaultec. All right. Below here, I have my line items. So as we saw in the invoice wizard before, my linked budgets, and basically that's it. What I would do at this point in time, I would check all of this information, whether it's good. If it is, normally what you can do is you can just finalize the invoice at this point in time, making it a proper official invoice. However, since I'm integrated with Xero, what I can also do is I can hit the copy to Xero button here, choose which customer we are using, which tax rate, what's the status of the invoice, and then hit copy and finalize. This will finalize the invoice, copy it over into Xero. Xero will give it the number, remember the numbering scheme. Xero will give it the invoice number, and we'll pull the number back here into productive. In my case, I'll just choose to finalize the option at this point in time. I won't copy it over yet. Once an invoice has been finalized, the next step that we generally want to do is we want to send the invoice to our client, right? There's very little chance that they're going to pay us for it if they don't receive it. Now, you can send the invoice to your clients through Productive just by hitting the Send to Client button here. Okay, we're seeing who the sender is. It's outbox.productive.io in this case. Who are we billing it to? To a client at that company. Very simple email that you can customize. Do we want to? Also have the attachment here, and we can choose send. Of course, we can customize this to a certain extent as much as we need to. Once the invoice has been sent over, we want to mark it as sent. So we sent it to the client on the 5th of December 24. Cool. So we have draft, then we have finalized. Now we have sent the invoice and marked as a sent. The next step is to start receiving payments from our client. As I mentioned, if we're integrated with a tool, with an accounting tool, when the payment lands in that tool, it will also be pulled back into productive. But what we can also do is we can record payments manually here as needed. The invoice gets paid at some point in time, and our process there is done. With that said, there is an additional option that you have here, and these are payment reminders. With payment reminders, you can set up a reminder schedule to send out to your clients to settle their invoices. So if I do this, I'll be creating reminders that are scheduled to send out on the 30th of January and on the 5th of February. Of course, if the invoice is paid at any point in time fully, then my reminders become stopped. So we won't be reminding our clients to pay invoices that have already been settled, which is always a good thing. Now, with that said, that is your entire process when it comes to invoicing. There's nothing more complex than this. This is it. This is the thing that you'll be doing. With that said, there are a few things, a few maybe advanced hints and tips that you can take advantage of here. So let's go through those as well real quick. First up, retainers. If you are working with a lot of retainers, you will probably know that invoicing, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 budgets a month for one person can be a bit of a strain. To this end, and to make this load easier on you, what we've done is we've allowed you to automate the creation of your invoices. So how does this work? We actually talked about this in our last webinar on the topic of automations as well, but it will be good to go over it here as well. So we want to go over into settings. We want to hop over into automations. And looky here, I already have it set up. How does this work? We're simply telling Productive that when a budget has been updated, okay, but what has been updated? Well, the status has changed to delivered. We want to create an invoice. This, in essence, means that at the end of a month, you simply have to go into your retainer budget, deliver them. Productive will create the invoice drafts for you. Note that it will create invoice drafts and not take them steps further, because it's still expected that you want to check the invoices before you finalize them, copy them over to an accounting tool, and send them to your clients. That's one thing. Another thing that you might want to do, let's go back here a bit, is let's say that I have a job that we're going to be invoicing 50% now on the 5th of December and 50% on the 5th of February, for instance, so in a few months' time. I want to remember that I have to invoice this. I don't want to forget about it. So what I want to do in this case is I want to go into the budget itself. Let's go into my greenhouse initiative here. And actually, let's find a different budget. Let's go to this one. What I want to do now is I want to go through the entire process of creating an invoice and creating a draft, not further than that, and change the date of that invoice to, let's go to one of our invoices here, and change the date of the invoice to, let's say, the 5th of February, but keep it as a draft. Once I have that in place, I can easily create a report that we'll see in a second on my dashboard, create a report that will basically act as a reminder system telling me, hey, you have some drafts with a date of this week, communicating effectively to me and everyone else, hey, we have to finalize this, right? This is a way that you can, to a certain extent, have an invoicing scheduled prepared ahead of time, so just so that you don't forget to invoice your client. So yeah, those are some advanced or more use case specific options. However, with that said, there are a few more advanced things that are coming in the near future. So what are those? This is the exciting part. So we have some upcoming features coming to Productive's invoicing. So let's go over those as well right now. First up, invoicing permissions. So currently, if somebody has access to invoicing, they have access to everything regarding invoicing, right? What we are planning to release in the near future is more segmented, more granulated permissions, where you can actually dictate, okay, so this person can create a draft, this other person can finalize an invoice, this third person can send an invoice to a client, and this fourth person can actually copy an invoice over to our accounting tool. This can all be the same person. You can mix and match however you please, but you will be able to segment your people based on what they can do in regards to invoicing. And of course, as is written here, so this is the foundation for our planned invoice approval process. So what we are planning to release further down the line is a process by which you will actually be able to approve invoices to be sent out to the client, to the accounting tool, however you see fit. And of course, this is part of the permission set feature in Productive. The second thing is scheduled invoicing. So I mentioned the thingy with the drafts where you can, create the drafts ahead of time and then check when to finalize them. Scheduled invoicing gets around this, and it will be a feature dedicated specifically to this end so that you can schedule invoices ahead of time. How does this work? Or how will it work? Well, it's still in a concept phase, but the general idea is that when you create an invoice, you'll be able to schedule the invoice to be created another invoice to be created ahead of time in the future at some point in time. So you'll create an invoice and then schedule further down the line. An alternative option here is related to retainers, to recurring budgets, where as soon as you convert a budget to a recurring budget, you'll be able to say, okay, I want Productive to automatically create an invoice for this job. And the third thingy is bulk copy to accounting. So currently, whenever you create an invoice in Productive, you have to copy it over into your accounting tool one by one. We understand that this is not exactly ideal, especially for people who have a lot of invoices. So what we are planning to do in the future is to set up something like this, where you will be able to multi-select invoices and then say, okay, let's copy all 50 of these over to QuickBooks, Xero, whatever else it is that we're using. And that is basically it. And I just became aware of the fact that I forgot to show you reports here. So we already covered this to a certain extent in our not second to last webinar on the topic of invoicing, but let's go through these quickly as well here. So first up, which reports do I have here? Well, the first thing that I have is uninvoiced budgets, right? Which budgets do I still have to invoice? This is a very simple widget to build. It's using the budget data source with this information and these filters. This tells me what I need to invoice for my clients. Secondly, profitability by client. So how much money have we invoiced to the client? How much did the delivery of the job cost us? What's the profit? What's the margin? Again, a very simple setup. We're using financial items and grouping data by a company. Unpaid amount by client. You do not want to be on this graph if you're a client. How does this work? Well, we're using the invoices data source and just checking our overdue amounts here. So I see here that Galaxy News owes me this much money and West Tech owes me sorry, other way around. Westec owes me this much. Galaxy News owes me this much. Aging report. So to see how overdue our invoices are. Again, simple invoices report grouped by aging. Mine are all in the 15 to 45 category. Yours probably won't be. Overdue amounts by period. So in which period did my overdue amounts originate? Using, again, invoices, unsurprisingly, and looking only at overdue ones grouped by their date. Profitability by month. So how much money do we have coming in each month from our invoices? What's our invoiced amount? What's our invoice profit? Invoices to finalize this week, I mentioned previously, so I'm creating drafts ahead of time, and Productive is telling me here, hey, you have to invoice these two things this week. And lastly here, invoices not copied to accounting. Oh, sorry, I didn't show you this. So again, we're using invoices. The date is this week. The invoice state is draft, and no filtering, no grouping. That's it. Invoices not copied to accounting. Very simple. Again, we're using invoices. Copied to accounting is no, and the date is year to date. So all past invoices that haven't yet been copied over. This makes it so that, there's very little chance of us creating an invoice and then just leaving it in Productive without sending it over to our tool of choice. And that is basically it. Once you have all of this in place, you'll be able to get to this idea where you have all of your information in one place, where your whole process is under one roof in Productive, and integrated and smoothly working with your accounting tool of choice. That's it from me at this point in time. Let's go over to your questions. Let me just go to the appropriate screen here. All right. Q&A. All right. If I have multiple subsidiaries in the Productive environment and assigned projects already to subsidiaries correctly, is it possible to only show the invoice templates that are related to that specific subsidiaries to avoid that we avoid sending invoices from the wrong template? I see. So you want to, Christoph, if I understand correctly, you want to create a connection so that each individual templates are only available at individual subsidiaries, right? If I understand that correctly, the answer currently is no. Currently, you cannot do that. Currently, all templates are available to all subsidiaries. However, this is something that we have had requests for in the past. So yeah, please reach out to our support team or success team for that matter. Let us know about this so we can prioritize this feature. One thing that I would suggest in this case is editing your invoice template name with the subsidiary name. So let's say that you have a subsidiary in Los Angeles and a subsidiary in London. You would name the template LON-01 or something like that, just to make sure that each subsidiary has access to the right one. Well, they all have access to all of them, but just so that they don't mix them up in the process. Christoph, let me know in the chat if it's not a complete solution for you, but I'm hoping it's at least close. Vedina, is there a possibility to change how the attributes are shown on the invoice? For example, invoice date is shown as invoice. Can it be shown as invoice date? So you mean on the, Vedina, do you mean on the PDF itself? Okay. I believe that is something that you can do. I'm not 100% sure, but let me check. I'll share my screen again. Share. Just get the chat out of the way. So settings in the document templates here, in this template that we have. So Alvedina, if I understand correctly, you want where is the? So the date here is the 12th of May, and you want it to be shown as invoice date, right? If I understand correctly, then what you can do here is you can override labels and then say instead of date, invoice, oh my God, invoice date. And if we save that, yeah, you'll see it updating here, right? Is that close to what you had in mind? Let me just hop over to the chat. Alvadina, is that something that you were aiming at? Let me know in the chat. I'll go over to the other questions. Yeah, okay, cool. That's it. Yay. All right. Alvadina, question number 2. Is there an option to set up that system maps 2 or more GL accounts while invoicing? For example, GL milestone and GL WHD. Not sure. So that system maps 2 or more. What's a GL here? Alvadina, sorry, what's GL? A general ledger, I'm assuming, right? Yes, okay. Well, here's the, I mean, if I'm understanding your question correctly, let me reshare screen here as soon as I find how. All right, so share, let's go to settings here, discard. Let's go to our marketplace and let's go to 0. Let's edit this. So when we get to this step here, you can choose, for example, my administrative work is always going to be synced to my other revenue. My business development and productive will also be synced to my other revenue. I can set up everything to be synced to other revenue instead of except for social media, which is synced to interest income. Is that what you had in mind, Odina? Odina, let me know in the chat when you. Okay, that solves the problem. Great. Alrighty. Okay, I'm gonna butcher the name. So Merin, will you add more customization options to the templates? Yes, we will. We're actually working on our document styler right now, which will let you customize what your invoice PDFs look like in terms of color, font, stuff like that. And then further down the line, we're also going to be working on a full-fledged proposal builder so that you can actually customize the invoice PDF and the other PDFs as well. So proposals and budgets, much more to your heart's desire. So yes, it is definitely being worked on very, very actively. And yeah, Marin, if you haven't already, please let us know that you're interested in this feature. Same as always, we want to know that people are interested in this, so that we can bump the priority up, but also so that we can get back to you as soon as the feature is ready. Merin, just let me know in the chat if that's a decent enough question answer for you. Okay, Sven, do you have an ETA for when the advanced document builder would be ready so we can style the offers, invoices with our corporate fonts, color, style, etc.? I don't think I can. I don't think I do know an official ETA at this point in time. I do know that it's being worked on, and do know it's being tested, and I think that we should have it ready soon. But I wouldn't be able to give you a specific ETA at this point in time. If you're very interested in the feature, again, please let us know. We might even be able to to give you some info ahead of time. Sven, I hope that's okay. Where did we go? Okay, Josh. After selecting finalize and generating an invoice number, what can you change? What can't you change? That's a very good question. Yes. Let's go back here into productive. Yes, discard changes. Let's go back into an invoice. Now let's find one of my drafts. That is not a draft. Is this a draft? It is not a draft. Is this a draft? It is a draft. Okay. So in draft status, I can change basically anything, right? I can change my link budgets, my services, whatever. Once it's finalized, I am still able to change a lot of the information here, right? So I can still make changes at this point in time. However, as soon as I mark it as sent, then it locks in, right? And at this point in time, I can't change my date or anything because it's assumed, hey, you send the invoice to the client looking like this. You can't just change it at this point in time. With that said, there is an additional thing that I can point out here, and it's related to automations. I won't go into the details, but what you can do is you can set up an automation that, let's say, whenever somebody unsends an invoice, this action sends an email out to the competent person in your, or I should say the relevant person in your team, right? You don't want people unsending invoices without, and then potentially changing them without your approval, without your, without your supervision. So what you can do is you can set up an automation that lets you know whenever somebody makes these changes in productive. And yeah, once an invoice is sent at this point in time, it's locked, and we just generate, we just receive payment, so no more status changes on this front. Josh, is that a good answer for you? Let me know in the chat, please. Okay. If your accounting tool doesn't integrate with Productive, is there a way to just create a CSV with data? Otherwise, how will the send to accounting work, or maybe it becomes meaningless? That is a good question. If your tool of choice doesn't integrate with Productive, the first step is to let us know, hey, I'm using this local tool or this whatever tool. Can Productive integrate with it? That's step number one always. You let us know, and then we'll see what we can do on our end. However, if it is a tool that for whichever reason we cannot integrate with, or we cannot integrate with quickly enough for you, there is a good solution for you still. So if I have my invoice here, I can easily take the number of this invoice, so 2024-03, and head over into reports, create a report from scratch using the invoice line items data source. In the filter, I'll say, give me all line items belonging to this invoice 2024-03. Set up the field that you want here below, that you want to export. Hit the download button, CSV, and export. Even better if you save this report, when you customize it, you save it so that you don't have to change the fields every single time. And you just come in here and say, you know what, give me not for 03, but 02. This is the best option that you have at this point. So you will still skip the entire step of manually creating everything from scratch. You'll avoid the mistakes. You'll be able to ferry your invoice over into your accounting tool of choice. Josh, let me know what you think of this as a solution, please. If you think that this would be useful to you in your case. Let's go move on. Okay, thanks again. That's clear. Great. All right. Alvedina, yes. Okay. Is there a way to create draft invoices automatically? We have a lot of clients on retainers. This will save us loads of time. Yes. So as we've seen before, let's close this. I'm going to go over into my settings. I'm going to go over into my automations part, and I'm going to go into this automation that I already created, right? So here I have an automation that says whenever a budget has been updated and its status has changed to delivered, I want to create an invoice on this budget. So this means that the invoice creation, the draft creation will become automatic, and you'll just have to finalize and send it over to, copy it over to accounting, I should say. Note one other thing that you can also do here. Let's say that you don't want to do this for your normal, let's say, non-recurring budgets. You can also add in an additional parameter here for Productive to check that the recurring is set to yes. Then Productive will only do this to your recurring budgets. You can also add other filters here, other conditions here, like do it only for this client, or do it only for invoices within this date range, stuff like that. Mr. Anonymous Attendee, please let me know if that's all right with you. All right. That solves the problem. Dominic says, hi, thanks for all the information. No problem, thanks for being here. If I want to invoice expenses, where the according invoice is already in my booking system, can I copy them from there to Exact? That's a good question. As I mentioned previously, we currently have expense integration, or expense sync, I should say, for two tools, Xero and QuickBooks. Exact, I believe, is the next on our list. I can't give you an ETA, but I do believe that we are going to be working on it very shortly. So I do believe that that is something that will be available fairly soon. Again, I can't give you an ETA off the top of my head, but if you reach out to us via chat, mail, whatever, we might be able to give you a bit more info on that front. And for now, Dominic, what you can do, if you go into our help here, you can check what zero expense. Okay, you can check how we've done it for Zero or for QuickBooks. It will essentially work the same way in Exact as well once it's released. Okay, Dominic, let me know if that answers your question there. All right. Alex says, we mainly work on an estimate basis, but take a percentage deposit upfront. We tend to do this in Zero manually. Is there a way of doing this in Productive? Yes. You don't want to be doing it in Zero manually. Let's imagine, let me just find one of my appropriate budgets here. I already have some invoices here. Let's see if I have any budgets with no invoice. Okay, what I'll do is I'll delete this invoice. I will delete this credit note that I created by accident, and I will delete the invoice itself. Delete invoice, yes. All right, so I have my promo campaign here. I want to invoice the client 500 euros ahead of time, and then the remaining at some point in the future. Can I do that? Yes, I can. New invoice, next step, percentage of total amount. So we're invoicing 10% ahead of time, so 500 euros. I'm going to create a draft and then take it through the entire process, right? Finalize it, send it over, whatnot. I can also do, at this point in time, I can also tell the system, you know what, new invoice, yes, next step. The remaining 90%, we will create a draft on the date of the 6th of March. That's when we want to invoice the remainder of this job. And there you have it. You've invoiced 10% ahead of time, and you've already put it in the system that you want to schedule the remainder at some point in the future. Let me get back to our chat to see. Okay, Alex, let me know if that answers your situation, if I understood you correctly. Okay, that was Alex. Emma says we would be interested in the customized PDFs. Great. Let us know via chat, via mail, something, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we have some more info on that front. By automated drafting, could it also propose invoice subject? For monthly invoices, we always state the period in the subject. That is a good question. Let's take a look, because I'm not sure off the top of my head. Create invoice. So displaying services as, from what I can tell, we don't have the option to set up, let's just reload this, to set up a different subject. Okay, Thomas, I'm not 100% sure how this works. I'll try to keep a mental note to check this and get back to you. But you can also reach out to me, and then we'll do some brainstorming here. Does that work for you? All right, cool. Yeah, I don't really have an answer for you, and I would hate to take up like 5 minutes of our time to go through this. All right. Mary, let's say, okay, that chat was disabled. That's good. Okay. Sven, does Productive support the e-invoice, as in Germany, it's by law that you have to send e-invoice? Yes, we are working on setting this up on our end, and we hope to have this ready very soon. However, please let us know what how you would expect this to work on your end, just so that we can make sure that what we have planned will match your expectations or your requirements on this front. So it's always useful to do this so that you can plan ahead of time with what we are planning to release. Sven, does that work? Is that okay with you? Yeah, I'll let Sven get back to me there. And I'll go over to the currently last question, but maybe a few more come in. Christoph, are you working on a feature to let a drafted invoice update with the most recent invoice amounts of TNM budgets? Okay, so let's say that I want to schedule an invoice end of January 25 for a TNM budget by drafting the invoice already, but logically we have no hour to realize that we could invoice when drafting the invoice. Yeah, so you're creating a draft ahead of time to schedule the invoicing, but then you want to populate it with time that was tracked in the meantime after the creation of the draft. I am like at least 75% sure that this scheduled invoicing will do the trick for you, right? Because the scheduled invoicing, it won't create an invoice ahead of time. It will just give Productive the order. Hey, we want you to create an invoice at this point in time. And if it creates the invoice later on, it can then pull the time from the previous period into that invoice. Christoph, does that make sense? Okay, cool. But yeah, Christoph, please, this is a very interesting and very good use case that you have here, a very good comment. If you haven't already, let us know about this, just so that we can check if the scheduled invoicing thingy will be something that will solve your situation here. Alrighty. Alex says thanks. Thomas says thanks. Thomas says improvements. Cool. Invoicing rights will be nice. Great. Yes. Okay. I will leave you all with a few more minutes to ask any questions if you have. In the meantime, I'm going to be asking you a question of my own. So, reminder, we have a lot of cool stuff here. In the spirit of giving and Christmas, we'll be doing it the following way. I'll ask a question, you answer it, and the first two people that give the best possible answer get one of these goodie bags. The question is not at all Productive related, so even if you have been half asleep for the last 40-ish, 50 minutes, you'll still be able to answer this correctly. The question is, what is the best, objectively, the best Christmas movie ever made? Okay, we have Thomas with Die Hard. We have Frida with Harry Potter. Elvedina with Home Alone. Dominic again with Home Alone. Muppets Christmas Carol. Alex with Home Alone. Love Actually from Ali. Do we have any other contenders here? Nightmare Before Christmas is also a very good one, yeah. In my mind, the best Christmas movie ever is Die Hard. It's an official belief of both myself and everyone, and Thomas also, I would say, based on his comment. So yeah, Thomas, you get one of these goodie bags. As we chatted, you can come pick it up personally, or you can just send me your email address or your physical address, and then we'll send it over. Frida with Harry Potter. Harry Potter is not a film that I would have considered here, but it is a very good guess, so I'm thinking we can go with that as well. So yeah, Thomas, Frida, congratulations. You both win a goodie pack. Please get in touch with either our chat in the support system or reach out to us via mail. Send us your addresses, and we'll be sending you these goodies over, hopefully before Christmas. With that said, Thomas says yippee-ki-yay, and I'm not allowed to finish that phrase. All right. Thanks everyone for joining in. I hope this has been useful and productive for you. I hope I'll see you again in a month or thereabouts time for our next webinar on the topic of profitability. In the meantime, stay safe, have a lovely Christmas, have a lovely New Year's, and we'll see each other soon. Bye-bye.